afternoon, dental internet world. My name is Dr. Vishal Sharma alongside my friend and colleague, Dr. Mike Parchewski. Mike, Happy New Year. As they oftentimes say, New Year, New You. And that's a great segue into our guest, because if I was to reinvent myself and my dental technology, this is the person I would want to become. Mike, I'm going to let you introduce our good friend and colleague, Dr. Ami Rihal.
Right on. Thanks, Vish, and Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year's to our guest, Dr. Rihal. Dr. Rihal's very well versed and almost, I would borderline say, even famous dentist coming out of the city of Winnipeg. One of the biggest clinics in Canada he oversees with a very modern lab. So we're very privileged to have him here because he is one of the key opinion leaders for Dentsply Sirona, lectures around the world on 3D printing and technology. And when he shows pictures of his dental lab at his office, it is literally filled with different 3D printers. This guy knows dentistry from the start to the finish, and I'm always wowed when I do see him lecturing. So special thanks for coming to see us here, and great to have you.
Oh, well, thanks, guys. Honored to be here. So, it was great actually at our last KOL meeting in Calgary, just to sit down with each other. We don't often have that opportunity just to connect amongst ourselves as teachers, So it's great comparing notes and being inspired by each other. So it's very much a pleasure to be here. So.
Well, we're happy to have you, Ami. Next to Slurpees, you're probably the best thing to come out of Winnipeg in quite some time. So we're going to jump into the Q&A here. Mike alluded to the fact that you have a very unique and interesting practice. And we'd love if you could just take a few moments to tell us about how that practice grew into what it was or what it is today, and the infrastructure surrounding that practice.
Sure. Well, so it's a Assiniboine dental group. So long standing history and kind of a real unique model at the time when it formulated in the late 60s or mid 60s. So the region of Winnipeg called St. James or Assiniboia, these five independent practice owners had the bright idea, well, why don't we get together and form a large group practice? So, and I think really at that time, it was really kind of unheard of. They didn't really have larger modeled scaled practices like that. So really exceptionally skilled practitioners, really well respected in the Winnipeg environment, kind of national, provincial leaders in terms of organized dentistry, and a really reputable bunch, all teachers at a faculty here. And they formulated this larger concept of group practice. So, the tenet and the model was really, it was an evolution of practice that was really patient centric. So you show up, and the line was that you put on your rented gown, you treat your patients, you're on your treadmill. At the end of the day, you hang up your gown, you're off your treadmill, and the next dentist kind of takes the torch, so to speak. So it's had a really successful evolution and an immense amount of growth over the years. So, this kind of occurred and happened over a larger period of time. I graduated in 1995 and joined the group. So they kind of taught me in school and invited me on board, and been there since day one. A real strong clinical mentorship program when I started there. So you had the ability to work, but also take some time off and watch them work. So that was really inspiring as a young kid. I often say that, like, everything, all my tricks in dentistry and hacks in dentistry came from that first year of practice watching these guys. Fortunate enough to evolve through there and kind of grew up doing an immense amount of dentistry. And I think it was 2012, initially the clinic was kind of formulated in this flat building. There was a larger medical practice, a small pharmacy, and us. So it was a real symbiotic relationship. And then we were expanding and growing, and it got to the point where we didn't have enough room or capacity with that. So we kind of ventured off, and we basically, and I think at that point in time we had 5 partners. We kind of got a Safeway and basically gutted a Safeway. And then we built this larger office. So it's about, I think it's about 16,500 square feet over 2 floors with 34 clinical laboratories. And so a big kind of undertaking. We've kind of grown to about a staff of, I think, about 112 people now, and full and part-time 22 or 23 dentists, something like that. But fully digitally, vertically oriented. So everything's digital from radiography to our CRM, uh, full digital lab with same-day services. So nothing leaves the building. All the manufacturing for any restoration or material is done in-house. So it's been, yeah, a real interesting adventure in dentistry for sure.
And so, obviously, when you're not walking through the old produce department and checking on the various Safeway departments in the clinic, what does a typical day look like for you clinically, Ami? Because obviously, the insourcing where everything is internalized is just such a really interesting and admirable and appealing concept, not only from a patient-centric point of view, but also an efficiency and practicality point of view. But walk us through what your day typically entails, including a lot of the lab-based technology stuff that you're dealing with.
Sure. So, and I think for me, like where it really came to light was like we were interested in CAD/CAM, and it was about 15 years ago, and I think the first 5-year clinical results on EMAX were coming out. And I remember the unveiling of that. It was like CEREC 22 and a half. And I think it was actually Bobby Joe that dragged me down there. Um, and it was, I went to see, I'm trying to remember the name of the guy, Bob, it will come to me, but he was a material scientist. So I didn't go to any of the keynotes. And it was my associate and me and him at this lecture. And I was really interested in like success rates on the materializations for in-house manufacturing. And I remember him looking at me and saying like, well, do you want to leave? Like, and I felt bad for him because no one showed up to his lecture. But I'm like, I flew from Canada to hear you speak. And it was really fundamentally at that one little hour session with him. And it was very interactive. I could ask him questions where I was really sold on the science behind, the manufacturing component, really primarily based upon lithium disilicate at the time. And there wasn't a ton of materials like what we have today. And, so fundamentally, really on the plane ride home, I forced my partners, and well, actually, I ordered everything, and then I told my partners we ordered everything when I landed. So it was kind of a little bit of a shock to them, but we've all kind of evolved through it and had our, ups and downs with making it happen. But there was a lot of will to really make it succeed. So that was kind of the basis behind it. Now we also had a motto that we didn't want to cement glorified temporaries. We wanted to make sure that the level of what we customized for our patients, that everything would be fully customized, and that everything we cemented was equal or on par or better than what we were getting with our commercial laboratories, which were actually quite and still are quite great in Winnipeg. So we had that motivation behind it. I went out, we had one lab tech with me at the time. Her name was Julie. So her and I kind of set out to make this adventure kind of work. So we actually flew to California. I trained with this German ceramist who taught me how to layer porcelains. And then, so I learned kind of like the standard technical aspects on an analog basis. And then I just went and digitized everything I learned with Sarah. So that was kind of like the fundamental start of how things go. So for me today, everything is kind of driven that way. So I look at a case and, I've been fortunate enough where, I could do some ortho, I could do some perio surgery, much like you, Mike, I'm kind of into implants. So I got, enough diversification where I can look at a case and pretty much do every component from the manufacturing side to the full implementation of every clinical aspect of the case. So I look at cases kind of holistically. So for me, like I have 2 operatories, 2 exceptionally skilled dental assistants. We do a lot of ortho as well. So part of my day is kind of segmented there. There's lots of implants. There's some Celea laser technology, and then a lot of CAD/CAM. And then you know what? Like there's still some run-of-the-mill regular restorative. Still see patient bases I'm seeing the kids of the kids I've started with now, which is scarier the second time around. So I still get the odd 3-year-old rolling in, and mom and dad are making me see them. I'm petrified, but we seem to still be able to do it. So probably about 15 to 20 patients in a day, and lots of running around. So I'm skinny because I'm running up and down the stairs.
Keeps you fit, all those steps.
So my watch or my phone, I literally, without trying, I'm about 12,000 steps by the end of the day.
Wow.
I've actually, when we've had some live surgery programs here, that's just in our office. I've had 10,000 steps just running up and down the hallway, watching everybody
Yeah.
put in the implants. Burning question I had for you is, when you have sedated patients, do you still have those shopping carts? You can just wheel them out, or?
Well, you know what? It's kind of an interesting mechanic here, and it's such a synergistic relationship because we have a periodontist, we have a resident that did a GBR that does a lot of sedation and aids for us. We have a prosthodontist, we have an orthodontist, and we all work kind of together. So it's been great. Like, our patients are super loyal. They've just been an amazing part of my life. Like I'm like I would describe myself as like the most fortunate practitioner in Canada, bar none. Great opportunities and a real kind of safe mentoring environment where you can kind of do anything that you're passionate about in dentistry, or you can kind of foster a niche for yourself and go at it, and you're going to have a flood of people that are going to want you, which is great.
Now, another question I had was, what was was it a blue cam or a red cam you started back there with?
The blue cams just came out.
Okay.
So powdering and the blues were kind of like where things were at. I initially was looking at a red cam, but then but I bought what was interesting is I bought a blue cam and a full in-lab system right away.
Yeah.
And in-lab at that time, you could put the software on your blue cam, the ACU.
Okay.
So you did a separate PC. So I would kind of run. My life for me was like between chairside and in-lab. I spent more time in-lab. So I didn't even realize that there was a distinction between the two, because I was always there, on the manufacturing side. And I really think, like, when you kind of look at what's interesting, and I'm sure you guys can kind of speak to it as well too, when we're at the academy and we're teaching, is like the amount of appeal now for like everything digital has just gone through the roof with dentists. Like, everybody's so thirsty for stuff that personally I was doing 15 years ago, but that practices are now adopting. But I really truly think it's the art of manufacturing that gives you your best return on investment. So the scan send thing is good, but you really need to delve into manufacturing, and I think that's where the artistry lies for sure. It's the fun part.
Yeah, and I do notice a lot of the labs are trying to pick up the faster delivery, getting things to you sooner in order, I think, to be on a competitive level. Say we can get you a crown in 12 hours, 24 hours, things like that. But I still, every day when we're doing the in office, to me, deep margin, scan it. You don't have to bring that patient back. You don't have to re-anesthetize them. You don't have to re-isolate. It's one and done. And a lot less post-op problems, I think, being able to do that all in-house. Now, I just want to dovetail us into what I think is your sort of superpower, is 3D printing. You teach across Canada. You're coming out to, you're going to be coming out here a couple sessions to teach on 3D printing. Now, there's a hot topic now is the new resins that are coming out for the prime print for the splints, and everybody's been wanting to get, as I think, one of the biggest boost to your practice is if you can start doing splints in-house. 3D printed is a great practice builder. Tell us about what's coming, what your experience with the splints, with the prime print, and with the new resins coming. What do you see? How do you see that changing for the dentists going forward?
Well, I think the materializations have been like so amazing. Initially with splints and even dentures at the time, I think my first printer was when Form Labs was like a Kickstarter, like I was talking to you guys about. So I think I got it for $350 or something like that. It was a Form 1, like the very first one that they had. I still have it. It's in my lab. It's a little memento. I'm not sure why I keep it there, but it's sitting on a little stool in the corner of one part of my lab. And it was just the crappiest little thing, but I spent so much time on that thing, trying to figure stuff out. But I was making, digital dentures, like basically kind of like bases, and then pouring and injecting Lucitone against the 3D printed PMMA material. So kind of doing an initial scan fit, and they're great little dentures, and you still had the durability of doing a conventional Lucitone. The denture-based materials weren't that great. With the splint materials, the harder materials were always a little tougher, just due to insertion forces, kind of a little bit more unforgiving. tend to be a little bit more brittle. But there had been, in the last, I would say, 5 years, a huge advancements with the fracture resistance and elasticity modulus of these materials. So when you still need hard materials for certain cases, but generally, like with the new densified materials that are coming out, there's one called ST and SF. So ST is kind of like the stronger, tougher material, not heat softened, but the SF is strong but flexible. It's a little bit heat softened when you want, but the insertion force on those materials are so low that they're very, very comfortable. They snap in. Now, with splints, I 100% agree with you, Mike, that it's a great in-house feature, gets you printing, gets you manufacturing. I remember doing a return on investment, and I think it's when you look at the amount of milliliters that you use for the splint resin and what a typical, lab would charge for a bruxism appliance, it's a huge markup. So it's a very healthy way to kind of subsidize your practice and provide something that's almost immediate or almost same day for your patients. We kind of layer our technology too. Like we have prime scans everywhere, doing a bunch of crown bridge and those things. We have iTeros everywhere, doing wellness scans, but I could take an iTero scan, put it into InLab and use those to design splints, and vice versa. You can move your technology and your devices around. So I think the new materials that are coming out were really based upon the key soft splint materials. That kind of changed things where, all of a sudden a 3D printed splint was as good or on par in terms of comfort and durability as something that you would kind of conventionally get back from a lab, where I actually think that the new SF materials supersedes now the key soft materials. It's such an exceptional material. Super clear, very easy, like to finish. You're barely touching it after you've designed it. So heading out to Calgary, like the workshop is primarily going to be based upon, doing some of those splints. But what's interesting though is like people make mistakes in the software. It's actually one thing that they do wrong every single time. And it's just one little parameter. I'm not going to give it away. You're going to have to come to the course that once you get this thing set up right, your splints will work out every single time. So it's the magic sauce I'm going to give out in Calgary.
Mike's actually in Toronto teaching that weekend, so he can't attend. So if you feel free to give us an advanced tidbit, and we'll mute it and cut that out of the podcast.
Awesome.
So really useful information on the 3D printing component. You actually circumvented one of my questions on how someone who's interested in getting into 3D printing, how they can justify the investment. And I think the splint application and the new ease of delivery with some of the more flexible thermoplastic resins sort of answers that question. So I want to pivot over to DS Core. Obviously, your Dentsply Sirona is big in your ecosystem, Ami. How are you currently utilizing DS Core? I know you're a big in-lab user, but how are you using DS Core, and where do you see the future applications for it?
I wish it came sooner because prior to that, we're kind of like NASA here. Like the one thing that we've done for the last 15 years in CAD/CAM dentistry is I have every single case. So meaning I have my own DS Core or my own centralized system. And so it's tetrabytes of information that I've kind of cataloged or stored a variety of different ways. So we've kind of gone through a vamping of doing this. Now, the reason why you do that, like for me, selfishly, it's like education. So I could get cases and I can, this has been a good case to teach with, or, but you often think about like applications. So maybe you have someone that you've done a wellness scan on, or you've done, some prior work on, they break it, so you can pull up the case again, remill it, get it ready to go before they even enter your office. So there's a versatility and application that way for sure. DS Core for me, I think what will be very outstanding is twofold. One is communication. So a little bit like yourselves, being out teaching and kind of being the cheerleaders for the systems that we use and love with Dentsply Sirona. There's also a lot of like interactions. So, like you teach, you get a great crowd, it's fun, but then the questions come, right? Or you talked about this. I kind of don't remember what you're saying. So for me, helping people and colleagues design has been fantastic, and I do love doing that kind of thing. So it's been a communication basis. So my lab, Rihal Digital Designs, is out there. If you're having trouble with the case, we can connect, and it's very seamless. Secure. It meets. For us in Manitoba, it's FIA, but any privacy legislation, it has that assurance. The other aspect of it is also interprofessional collaboration. So you have a cone beam that's up there. You can create a canvas of interaction between your specialists. The viewer is built in. They can annotate. So it becomes totally 100% seamless, So I think that for me has been the most appealing thing. Before we're Dropboxing, half the systems were done this way. And the file sizes for some of those applications could be large enough where you need to have kind of a send me system of some kind in order to collaborate, where now you're centralized. So will I get rid of my servers here and just rely totally on the web? Maybe potentially, like I'm still kind of running dual systems. The other application where I think it's going to have, and I'm kind of predicting something, is maybe the design applications being within DS Core. And I think that, makes sense that that might be coming down the pike. So essentially you're going to be on a platform where I could kind of log in and do my design applications on a web-based portal. You're always going to be current in software. I could do that from anywhere in the world. You can have immediate access to all my assets, and I think that to me is like extremely appealing, as being as digital as we are, and all of our electronic health records are digitized. I can go and run my office on my phone essentially, and I'll have full access to records that way. And I think that's been the biggest versatility for how we think about cases, how we collaborate, and how we implement the cases and make them happen. So I think it's an amazing evolution. But, not having computers, so to speak, and being bogged down just from, drives, like I pretty much get the standard computers. And Mike, I'm sure you're the same, and then I jack them up a bit, so they're not normal computers by any means, so not having that ability to have to do that continually will be a great thing, I think.
Yeah, definitely has the ability to upgrade and to consistently build without you having to put so much into infrastructure, which, we had a flood, our servers went down, we had to, before that they wanted to replace them. Luckily, we had converted everything to the cloud before we had the flood. And, you're thinking about that, how much of your office, if it falls apart or you lose something, how much we're dependent on that. And so I love the idea of that, you could run your office from your phone, everything would be in the cloud. And I think that movement to that is far better. And then I wouldn't have to carry so many hard drives when I go to these courses with my 3,000 PowerPoints. Yeah.
And
That's exactly it.
And the real beauty for someone just getting into this digital design component, where they're wanting to aspire to do at least part of what you're doing, Ami, of course, is the AI assisted design component. Can you design a crown where the software is going to help you design 80% of that crown? Can you design a night guard where the software is helping you design the vast majority of that? I think that to me is really exciting for opening up this technology to, the dental masses.
Yeah. And
yeah, Sorry, go ahead.
No, all I was going to say was if you think back, Ami, I started with RedCam, and if you think back to the amount of work and technology that you had to have to be able to operate the RedCam, and the ability to make good crowns with red and blue cam, think about now that young dentist, just like Vish said, getting into it now, it's almost foolproof now, the designs and the ability, and it's just going to get better. So I think for people getting into it who've always been sort of hands off because it involves tech, it's the learning curve is steep, and I don't want to. Now the learning curve is so much faster. I think this is where a lot of dentists will want to make that move to get into the manufacturing in-house. And I do like, there's still a lot of people that just prefer sending to the lab and that workflow. But there's a certain pride that comes with making things in yourself and being responsible from start to finish. And I know you and Ami are that way, and Vish is obviously a big proponent of that, being that he's a teacher of the CIRAC program. But it's really about controlling the output, right? And you have to make sure that your margins are good, and you're critiquing everything that you do from start to finish. It's super important.
Yeah, and and honestly, like if I was starting out, I would say for sure, and it's like an evolution of everything, right? Like it's never been easier than right now, for sure. Materializations, technology, like you said, but you also don't have to do what I did. Like I'm a bit of a nut job when it comes to technology and computers, and when I maybe a little over the top with everything I do, but in terms of application, but Like when I'm teaching, I tell people, like, if you convert even your posterior restorations to a same day restoration, you've won. There's really nothing more you need to do to, number one, have a healthy return on investment. Two, take pride in what you're doing. Like you said, there's a feeling that you get, but also to elicit that patient experience. Now, you think about people taking time out of their day twice, having a temp, shade batching, in a lab where you have the exact same restoration going in a digitally converted office where you smile at them, their face is on the screen, they pick the length of their teeth, they pick the morphology of their teeth, and then you finish it right in front of them and manufacture it right in front of them. It's the exact same restoration, but what happens is the experience drives the value. So they're going to value what you do, but at the end of the day, it's the exact same thing. And
Yeah.
it's all based upon experience, right? Same day for sure is the way to go. 100%. Like everything you can do to make time more convenient for them, everything you can do to make choices more convenient for them increases the trust and value in terms of your patients' experiences, right? We like we don't advertise, like, really, and a large part of what we do, and we're kind of realizing, okay, we need to have a social media pulse, or we need to start doing something. But truly the fundamentals of this practice back from the 60s was all primarily word of mouth. My entire practice was just like blah blah blah, talk to blah blah blah, was married to them, they came and saw me. Like my entire practice was built upon, like my personal portion of it was built upon word of mouth. It's all experience based.
Yeah, it's huge, huge. Now let's take a left turn here. I'm not sure. I sometimes try to figure out how Vish and I have a time in a day. I still can't quite figure out how you do everything you do in a normal time frame. Probably a hyperbaric chamber would be my guess. But you're also on the National Dental Examining Board, and you're a part of implementing and proctoring the exams and working with the students on that. Tell us a little bit about that role. How did you get into that? What's coming down the pipeline? Where do you see? Are you going to keep involved with that? Where are you at with that one?
Yeah, so that actually came as I was on the MBA board. When did I start? 2009, I believe. There was an MDA president 2013, and then every DRA, every province has a regulatory representative that composes the board of the National Dental Examination Board. So sat on that board and kind of learned from, and I would say it's such a wonderful, amazing organization. It's a melting pot for dentists from all over Canada to collaborate to provide fair, reliable certification and examinations for anyone, whether you're international or accredited here in our faculties, wanting to practice dentistry. So the mission of NDB through a federal act of parliament is to provide certification examinations and certificates to people who want to practice dentistry in Canada. Like we were talking earlier, and I'm really proud to say that, from these experiences, I've seen dentistry around the world and the quality of dentistry around the world. And I would have to say that, Canada in particular has one of the highest standards of care that we provide to our patients, to our educational systems, but also part of our examination and certification systems or exams that we kind of apply to make sure that everyone is competent when they practice dentists in Canada. So started off at the board there and then kind of went through the ranks, and currently I'm halfway through my term as president of that organization. So it's been really amazing. I kind of use a little bit of my CEREC skills with some other technologically advanced dentists as well too. So there has been an evolution of our examinations on an electronic format where we use digital x-rays and also digital 3D models now, which will be very similar to our CEREC models, coincidentally. So the examination processes that are going through are also a lot more intuitive to what's currently happening at the level of care that we're seeing with technology, and also, the fundamentals of being competent as a dentist in Canada. So it's been an amazing group to work with for sure.
This is giving me a little PTSD talking about
I know.
OSCEs and accreditation and evaluations and dual markers. So prior to this, I was having a good time on the podcast, Ami, but now I'm looking over my shoulder to see if Dr. Tyler is behind me from Restorative Dentistry back in Saskatoon, where Mike and I went. Was Saskatoon accredited?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
good. All right. Just confirming that
Yeah.
Mike and I are both actual dentists. So, Ami, of course, you were part of the accreditation process for schools before, which I assume was where you kind of pivoted into your role with the National Dental Examining Board. Was that the precursor for it?
Well, I was kind of doing both systems at the time. I was on both boards, but I chaired CDAC for 6 years, actually, for a long time. And that was actually probably one of the most interesting positions I've had, simply because you learn about the global aspects of dentistry. So we do all the accreditation site visits for quality assurance for all of our faculties, all the dental assisting programs and dental hygiene programs as well too. So in Canada, there's roughly about 200 programs when you do the collective. And we also maintain the reciprocal agreements that we have with the States, Australia, and New Zealand. And it's a real, in Ireland, sorry. It's a real pivotal aspect for how everything, it's like the ruler of quality assurance for everything that we do in every form of dental regulation, education, and certification. So all those things are dependent upon where CDAX is the level of quality should be. So that was a real eye opener. It gave me a chance to see, what happens in other countries and other parts of the world. Unfortunately, a lot of these positions are political in nature. So with COVID, we evolved and pivoted to a virtual accreditation system using cameras and 3D virtual tours of faculties. And I was really proud of Canada because, like, you look at the States, their accreditation system basically went on hold for 2 years, where we actually kept the lights on and we were still doing site visits and virtual accreditations to the same quality or degree of what normally happens as well too. So it was really a stressful time, I would say, in my life, but also a very intuitive and kind of exciting time.
With those virtual site visits, Mike, if that would have happened when I was in school, they would have like forced me to hide in the closet when the cameraman was like walking by just to sneak that by. So
Yeah.
Well, the cameras that we used actually were really tiny, so we can kind of watch people working, and people forget about it. So you saw some bad habits kind of happen. Actually, it's kind of like watching slow train wrecks in some sites.
start a show called to Catch a Procrastinator, which was really my MO in dental school.
I think we're similar veins. I was a pretty lazy student myself.
Well, I think I could echo the sentiment that I'm happy I'm not writing the board exams coming up soon here, Ami. Lots of tension. Now, if we take a look, Ami, back to the 3D printing and knowing, we've already hinted to some of these courses you've got coming up. Let's talk a little bit about how can a younger dentist get into the 3D printing, or a dentist get into it? What do you see as the road to getting into technology? Because it's awfully daunting. Like, where would you start?
Well, I think you have to look at your end game. And I think we all talk about that, right? Because one thing that happens is, a dentist will go, well, I got this camera for $10,000 or whatever it is, and they buy this thing and they're like, well, can I make crowns with it? And it's not paired with any form of software. It doesn't have the ability. So you could have, a camera that's purely scan send. You have a camera that's purely scan design, not attached to any mill. And then you have like our worlds where we have scan design mill, a complete system. So you have to decide, where you want to be. And it doesn't mean that, okay, I have to do all this stuff like right away. It's just, I want to start scanning today, maybe a little bit of 3D printing, eventually maybe doing some manufacturing. And, the reason why I like Dentsply Sirona is it lets you pick your own path. It had the greatest amount, and still does, the greatest amount of materializations that are on the market, but also the most kind of and easiest digital workflows from A to Z. Like, Mike, you teach the implantology workflow. Like, have you ever had a system that's been as straightforward A to Z.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've done it all,
Yeah. Very
right?
robust. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to print technologies, okay, so funny enough, I just bought another printer. Like it's actually right behind me here. But it's a Neptune 4 large spread printer that's works on filament. So I'm doing a couple of other larger applications where I've dreamt up of doing an actual anatomic articulator for a case, so I could actually print the condyles. So I could print an entire head with this printer. It's like the bed is huge, but it just never stops, right? So I think you have to decide on a printer to start. You don't need, if you're interested in just printing a few things and trying it out and seeing if you like it, you can get a printer for a few hundred or a couple $100 and get your feet wet. I would think that in terms of getting something into your office, and we have multiple printers. So we have our prime prints that are a mainstay that are going and probably the easiest in terms of integration. I can scan a patient for my prime scan, hit a button, and I'm printing that model. There's no importing, exporting, nesting files, or setting up supports or anything. Like the easiest workflow. We also have an ASIGA, so I'm unlimited there. I got 350 materials I could choose from. So that printer's going all the time, doing a variety of different things, at a lower price points as well too. But, I'm handling the resin, was it my first printer? So you have to know some stuff to use that one. So I would have to say that, like, really finding a mentor, taking one of our courses, trying out a few different applications. If you're scanning, and you're comfortable scanning and scanning and sending a scan out, you have the technical skills that you can easily 3D print. There's pretty much not much to it, and it's so automated now in majority of the softwares, they're all kind of single touch operation. I would have to say, in terms of what I've seen coming through, that the prime prints have been the easiest integrations into 3D printing that I've experienced with people. So, we've had a couple of ASIGAs. I sold one when I bought my prime prints. I still kept one. But I had to kind of coach those guys along. They got a prime print as well, and they've had an easier integration, they said, with the prime prints. So it's really kind of experience based, but you get better at it as the more you do it. I think what's really exciting about it is the materials that are coming out. So Lucitone's 3D printable. So my next big thing now, and I have a case on the go, and I might be teaching in Calgary, is doing a digital denture setup. So the one I'm working on, actually, I saw her today. I'm virtually removing teeth, and I'm going to do a 3D printed immediate denture for her with set Ivoclar portrait teeth. And I'll be the first one that'll do with a Lucitone equivalent print material. And I think that's an amazing application, all just for my initial treatment planning records. So didn't need to take anything else. I have her face on the computer, I have her smile, I have her scans, and I can do the entire treatment. So I don't need stabilizing bases, and I can virtually articulate her with her face being right there. So it's going to be, I think, a pretty amazing application. The other material I think that's going to be a game changer are the nano permanent resin materials. So when you look at, prepless application on CAD/CAM, it's a very hard thing to do. The hull axes, when you're trying to mill material, you need to have some thickness to it, so you can't really do things without really prepping, unless the teeth are really kind of, flat, I guess, to a certain degree, and don't have a lot of undercuts. But when you look at these nano hybrids, you can kind of 3D print an undercut, and there's enough elasticity in those materials. So the combinations of ceramics and resins, and I think the research on them are looking really good. So kind of like similar in vein to like an anamic type material, but having the ability to, orthodontically move some teeth and doing some prepless veneers, all virtually without having to do any preps is extremely appealing. And I think there's a lot of promise in those materials. Beyond that, I think, materials are just going to get better, stronger, and more durable over time. So it'll be interesting to see. I know laser sintering was kind of a mechanic with zirconia. Like, you can laser sinter zirconia. It just doesn't make sense to, because it's way cheaper and faster to mill it, So you also have to kind of pick, whether you're printing or milling, which one's a little bit more efficient in terms of application as well.
Lots of really interesting information, Ami. You alluded to a course that you have February 9th in Calgary. What else do you have coming up on the horizon for teaching? What events? What are you doing at the Academy this year?
Yeah, so we have a couple of level threes. So level three is kind of like a little bit more advanced, kind of handing off from the guys with level two. So we do a lot of smile design, the full restorative basis for implants. So Mike, after you place your implant and you teach them how to do that, I teach them how to restore it with a tie base and an Atlantis option. So we go through all the different permutations of that. Smile design, virtual articulation is a big part of it. So we do a lot of anterior work with customizations. So we got a couple of those sessions coming up. We're finalizing the dates on that. We also have 2 advanced prime print courses as well. So 2 days on every single 3D print application coming out of InLab. So pretty much every button we touch in that course. And that we ran that pilot program last year, and it was, I would say, probably the funnest one I teach. I enjoy teaching that one, actually.
And that's out of the Academy, Ami?
That's out of the Academy. PDC, there's another interesting piece of technology called the Celea laser. It's a CO2 hard soft tissue complete laser system from Convergence Dental. I've adopted that and been kind of speaking for them. So I'm lecturing about that laser at the PDC on the Thursday morning. And also my Digital Design Academy will be happening and being unveiled this year as well too. So we're going to have some programs right out of Winnipeg. I got all my licenses and computers ordered and putting everything together here. So we're going to be doing some stuff at the Safeway here.
Nice.
That's exciting. And what was the name of your company again for the digital designs?
Sure, it's just Rihal Digital Designs. But you can kind of keep up to date on what's kind of happening down the pike if you follow me on Instagram. So it's a Rihal1 on Instagram, and there'll be some stuff coming out there.
And then, not to diminish the importance of 3D printing, but what's going on with your band and your music life, and what's your next gig?
Okay, so probably in and around St. Paddy's Day. So we, and kind of weirdly enough, my best friend that passed away owned a pub, and he was my singer for almost 30 or 35 years of my life. But his daughter and his wife are running the pub. I'm kind of helping him out doing that. But we do get together and we play a bunch of Celtic music. So they're Irish descendants. So it's kind of weird seeing a Sikh guy playing a mandolin or a 12 string and singing Irish music, but somehow or another it works. So I think that's going to be probably one there coming up. And then, yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen after that. I still sit down on my guitars every now and then, but I'm trying to learn how to play piano. That's something new.
The real question is, you have more guitars than you have 3D printers, and do you also have a shamrock turban would be the next question. But we'll have to save that, Mike, for the next podcast. Ami, this was fantastic. I took some notes. Mike and I were really excited to have you on because we knew that we would absorb some information, get really motivated in terms of getting into more of this technology. And it's really inspiring what you've done with your business, with your practice. And, it's great motivation for us to continue to forge ahead and really hone our skills in the 3D printing world as well. So, Mike, do you want to wrap it up for us?
Yes, I'd like to say thanks again. Really appreciate it. I echo my colleague Vish, all of his kind words. And man, yeah, you do motivate us. When we think we're doing everything and killing it, we are like, we got to keep going. So I'll probably stay at the office here tonight for another few hours, just starting reading up on more materials and to be sharpened up. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ami, and we'll have to have you back on because there's so much we can talk about. So everybody out there, thanks so much for tuning in. Please like or subscribe at Digital Workflow Dentistry, Instagram, follow for links for the podcast. We're on all the major Spotify, Apple, everything. We're out there. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Thanks again, Ami.
Thanks, Ami.
Guys, appreciate it.